Great. Thank you so much, Nalani. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank Nalani as well as Malia and the whole team for inviting me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to join this group and talk a little bit about housing justice. So shelter is one of the most basic human necessities, yet housing is not really part of our national dialogue, like other issues like immigration, education, even healthcare. And years of regressive and racist zoning policies that were perpetuated by the federal government, including redlining and by right development, have created a disastrous shortage of housing stock across our nation. So as demand continuously outpaces the existing supply, tens of millions of Americans are what is called rent burdened. So what does that mean to be rent burdened? Typically, you should not spend more than 30% of your income on housing costs. But according to a Harvard study in 2016, more than 38 million families spent more than 30% of their incomes on housing. And while that was down by about 800,000 from 2015 and by 4.6 million from the peak during the foreclosure crisis in 2010, the number of cost burdened households was still some 6.5 million higher in 2016 than back in 2001. And so what does that mean for families? That means that they must cut costs elsewhere in food, healthcare, and other basic needs. And in some cases, and I've unfortunately experienced this a lot in my career in affordable housing development and specifically in preserving public housing, both here in New York as well as in Washington, D.C., that even if a family may not be necessarily rent burdened because they are either living in public housing or receive Section 8 assistance, they may be living in a home that is not healthy or safe. So that means that they could have mold in their bathrooms, they could have pests in their kitchens, and lead-based paint chipping in their kids' rooms, which we know is very hazardous to child development and child health. And so I have obviously in this time of the pandemic being stuck at home, really thought a lot about what housing is for me, both personally and professionally. I am blessed to have a home. I'm also blessed because I'm actually in the process of purchasing a home. So I'm currently a renter looking to transition into being a homeowner. But I live in the poorest urban congressional district in the country. I live in the Bronx, in the South Bronx specifically. And I know that my neighbors are struggling, whether they be living in shelters, some on the street, some in public housing, Section 8, or even conventional housing. This pandemic has really exacerbated all of those housing issues that were present prior to COVID-19. So where does that leave us? What I'm hopeful for is the fact that the Biden-Harris platform on housing is that housing should be a right, not a privilege. And in 21 and beyond, I think that there are three components to the progress that I would love to see in terms of housing justice that we really have a chance of getting right, especially with the new federal administration. And the first one is as of right rental assistance. So we talked about the need to alleviate a lot of families' rent burden, families, again, spending more than 30% of their income on rent, because roughly 3 in 4 households eligible for rental assistance, specifically Section 8 rental assistance, do not receive it because the program is underfunded. And so I love the fact that the Biden-Harris administration is promising to provide Section 8 housing vouchers to every single family so that no one has to pay more than 30% of their income towards rental housing. And then there's also the push to invest in housing as infrastructure, specifically here in New York, where we still have a lot of public housing that's deteriorating rapidly, and there's not enough funding to get it back into the shape that it used to be or provide residents with a safe alternative. And so if we reposition the way that we think about housing into more of an infrastructure issue, then housing can be treated more like roads and bridges and other heavy infrastructure that really supports the residents and really residents of this nation in a different way. And finally, addressing the underlying economic causes of housing inequality, and that's institutionalized racism, the lack of a universal basic income, and insufficient and inadequate jobs. And now more than ever, there is this opportunity for those jobs to be green jobs, for those jobs to support sustainability and actually feed back into that infrastructure investment that many cities and states and the nation as a whole is looking to do in order to address climate change. So I'll stop there. And again, thank you so much for your time. And I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.